pass rusher, wide receiver, and corner are three of the most important positions in football, three of the most highest paid, and they're all ones that the Vikings need. They could trade back and try to get two of those positions, or if they really love somebody there, go for it.
Welcome into another Purple Insider Extra. Jonathan Harrison here, joined once again by Purple Insider's Matthew Coller. Draft day is upon us, almost here. No, not you, Kevin Costner. Go back to your baseball field in Iowa. A while back, we discussed the QB class, but now I want to focus on three other positions that the Vikings could use their first-round pick on Thursday night. So let's start off with the cornerbacks. Who are the best fits in this cornerback class for the Vikings defense?
Am I in heaven or is it draft time? It's draft time. The best cornerback fits. I think that begins with Joey Porter Jr. out of Penn State. He is extremely lanky, a man coverage type of cornerback who you could see lining up in press coverage and using his long arms and his strength to shut people down. But that doesn't mean he's just that. I mean, I think he is an all-around corner who can do anything you want him to do. And this group just happens to have a lot of very, very good cornerback prospects. There could be 3 or 4 that are taken even in the top 20 and yet still good prospects beyond that. And I think Porter Jr., according to Mock Draft Database, has been projected around the 15 to 20 area. So if he slips even a little bit, because Christian Gonzalez is clearly going to go extremely high, based on the way that he performed at the combine, and his potential is very high. So there are other guys that are up at that top that are being considered the elite of the elite, but the next wave is still very good prospects. And I know that Vikings fans will say, oh, well, I don't want another cornerback. That's all we do is draft these bust cornerbacks in the first round. But I think that this group features players who are of a higher cut than some of the corners that haven't worked out for them recently. And I would also throw in Deonte Banks for this as someone who has been projected in the middle to back end of the first round. Relative athletic scores, which takes everything from the combine and kind of combines it into a percentile of athletic ability, had him as 100th percentile, which means it literally does not get better than Deonte Banks. But that's not all. I mean, similarly to Joey Porter Jr., his performance at Maryland was very, very good. So this is not a Mike Hughes where it was an undersized player who had a decent profile. This is someone who is a complete freak athlete that Brian Flores would like to work with. For me, it's those two that stand out as the guys that could be potential for the Vikings. But there are others. Emmanuel Forbes is a little bit on the undersized side, but is a great playmaker and had some of the best numbers in college. Interceptions, knocking down passes, things like that he had tremendous numbers there. So I don't think that Devon Witherspoon or Christian Gonzalez are going to be anywhere near where the Vikings pick. Those guys are considered the best of the best, but there's at least 3-4 other players in this group. It's really a good year to need a cornerback in the back half of the first round, even if Vikings fans will sort of groan if that happens.
What about wide receiver? The Vikings need a wide receiver too, now that Adam Thielen's departed. Who fits best out of this receiver class with the Vikings? I know it's probably an easy ask because they have Justin Jefferson on the other side of the field, so it's not like you're asking them to be the number one wide receiver, but who's the best fit for the Vikings at wide receiver?
Yeah, I think that assuming that Jackson Smith-Njigba, who is widely considered the best receiver in this class and is expected again to go very high, assuming that, and when I say expected, it could always happen that they don't. So Smith-Njigba would be a great fit. I mean, he's a guy that is a little bit criticized for playing in the slot a lot, but we saw that from Justin Jefferson, that playing in the slot is no longer something that should be considered a demerit against the prospect. He had 1,500 yards receiving in 2021 when he was playing with still other great receivers. Chris Olave, Garrett Wilson really stood out then. So I think he's a tremendous prospect. But if he's not on the board, then it's wide open a little bit to preference. So Quentin Johnston reminds me a little bit of a Deebo Samuel, where maybe some of the hands are not the best, the ball tracking, things like that. But man, if you get the ball in his hands, he could run over people. So you could see him taking short passes and taking them to the house. Well, Justin Jefferson kind of clears out the rest of the defense and creates space for somebody like Quentin Johnston. I really like Jordan Addison from what I've seen. A tremendous route runner, gets off the line of scrimmage, is really quick, really shifty. I think that there's a lot of options too with undersized wide receivers. Debate over Zay Flowers, who is a ball tracker, is also quick, great with the ball in his hands as well. Undersized. He's only 5'8", 5'9" on a good day with shoes on, and maybe standing on something like a brick. But that's kind of the theme though of this draft is, Josh Downs from North Carolina is really, really good at making contested catches and point of attack, things like that, and great with the ball in his hands, but he's only 5'8". And so are you willing as the Vikings to take an undersized wide receiver? Those guys might be there if you trade back a little bit, someone like Josh Downs, or if you go at 23, but there are lots of options. It's really picking from a menu of different types of players that whatever they think fits best, they could go with.
Now, the Vikings brought in Marcus Davenport after losing Dalvin Tomlinson. They still need possibly help on the defensive line, depending on whatever they do with Danielle Hunter coming up in June. So who are the best fits along the defensive line for the Vikings in this draft class?
Yeah, two guys that stand out to me. Kalijah Cansey out of Pitt. He is an interior pass rusher. Maybe he can move around a little bit. Undersized, again, I mean, that's the theme of this draft. A lot of players who are not of the traditional size that are actually really good prospects. So he's only like 6'1" and 280 pounds, but the Vikings once upon a time had a really good undersized defensive tackle. So not to say that he'll be the next John Randall, but I think in today's game that you can mix in players like that to rush the passer with guys like Harrison Phillips, who are more of a traditional defensive tackle type. And especially when the Vikings are going to play a 3-4 base, you have a 5 technique that plays kind of over the tackle or maybe over the guard, in between the tackle and guard and shoots gaps. That might be a great fit for them. The other one is Nolan Smith, who is just blazing fast, like 4.4 fast off of the edge, went to Georgia. And when you think about Brian Flores and wanting that outside wide 9 type of rusher who's going to play way outside the tackle and rush from the outside, Nolan Smith makes a lot of sense. It's another draft that has a lot of guys who are kind of in the category of more physically freakish than they are exactly like refined products. So there's going to be some choices there. Also, Will McDonald, the 4th from Iowa State, another one that's not the biggest guy, more of an outside linebacker, but that all fits with Brian Flores. And that is one of his positions. I mean, he was a linebacker coach. I think he's good at assessing these types of guys. So that's a spot that they could definitely look at. And that's why, I think one of the themes of just us talking about this draft is there will be many options at lots of positions that they could go with that are very serious needs. Pass rusher, wide receiver, and corner are 3 of the most important positions in football, 3 of the most highest paid, and they're all ones that the Vikings need. So, they could trade back and try to get 2 of those positions, or if they really love somebody there, go for it.
That's been another Purple Insider Extra for Bring Me the Sports. Be sure to rate, review, and subscribe to the Purple Insider podcast wherever you get your podcasts. Talk to you next time.